here we go.
Welcome to the Nine Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Nine Route Fantasy Football Podcast. Pat and Scott going to tackle our start sits for week number 8 in the NFL. A couple of teams on the bye this week. We have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. So obviously certain people will be out of the mix, which does actually push certain other players into the forefront, again, based on a matchup and a start sit. So if you're out Justin Herbert, Pat Mahomes, and members of those offenses, you know, your Travis Kelce's of the world, you may have a reasonable backup, but not a lot of people maybe carry tight ends, things like that. So we're going to help you get over the hump for this week and also touch base, on a little injury and trade news that's happened. Obviously, we did that earlier, and we're definitely going to follow up because now the NFL is getting hot and heavy, and these are all factors, again, that contribute to start sits and your team as a whole. We talked about trade targets last time, so some of this may have an effect on that as well for your basic keeper leagues where there's some draft picks as well as dynasty. Pat, I know you're going to go into our week 7 as well as we're going to touch base on week 8. So before you get started, did you want to hit them with the socials?
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at the 9route1 and at Scott from Delco. You can also check out our website, which is www.the9routeffb.com. You can email us at the 9routeffb@gmail.com as well. Yeah, you were talking about the trades and stuff like that, and with the trade deadline being Tuesday, I believe, should be a lot of speculation on some other players moving around before that trade deadline hits. So it's going to be very interesting. We're going to have our work cut out for us, making sure that we, get everything set for these episodes the next couple of weeks, because there's probably going to be some more people moving around and some fantasy football implications that are going to, sort of take some sort of shape based off of, players moving to different teams and things like that. So, but we'll make sure that we stay on top of that and hit you with that stuff in our future episodes as well. Let's start with this week's news and injuries. The New York Giants, after drafting Kadarius Toney with their 10th overall pick last year, decided to trade Toney to the Kansas City Chiefs for one of their compensation picks in the 3rd round of next year and another 6th round pick as well. Kind of a falling from grace for Kadarius Toney. Had a couple of good games last year, but wasn't healthy much of last year, hasn't been healthy too much this year. With this new regime in New York, they're just not really feeling the whole, Kadarius Toney not being out on the field thing, I guess, and decided to move him while they can still get something of some value for him. So that's the only big trade that went down. There was, I think, a defensive lineman, Robert Quinn, was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Doesn't really have any fantasy impact. There was another defensive lineman, I can't think of it off the top of my head, that was traded recently to, I believe, the Las Vegas Raiders. Jonathan Hankins, I want to say. But no real fantasy relevant trades other than potentially Kadarius Toney, who's still not scheduled to play anytime soon. But another weapon for Patrick Mahomes to play with. So he's definitely a guy that if you got an extra spot on your bench, wouldn't hurt to pick him up and throw a couple fab dollars at him if you have to, and just see if it turns into anything. I mean, I'm not super optimistic personally. I did grab him in one league where he was, I just had basically a free roster spot on my roster, and I threw him on there. So we'll see what happens. But got some injuries to talk about as well.
Literally, we're updating this as we speak with some breaking news. We all know that Ja'Marr Chase, we heard some bad news that there was an injury to his hip. They were really trying to, I guess, dig down and find out. Breaking news right now is that Ja'Marr Chase is not going to IR, but did sustain a hairline hip fracture and torn labrum. Sounds extremely painful, and I'm sure it is. Obviously, some of these guys are in way better shape than you and I, but
those aren't even in the same part of the body, are they? Your labrum's up by your your...
You do have a hip labrum.
Okay.
Yes, it's the ball socket, just like your shoulder. So it's like the reverse because we are animals and bipedal. But yes, we do all start it down. I know that because I know my guy in work that just had his hip done recently. So yeah, it is. It's crazy what they do with that, where they kind of just cut it off and put titanium in there. But that's a different story. Ja'Marr Chase, again, so far right now, they're saying hairline hip fracture, torn labrum, not currently scheduled to go on IR, albeit, that's probably still remains to be seen once most of the smoke clears with this. But again, that injury is a heavy hit for the defending AFC champions. And T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, obviously are the next guys that are obviously in line, but they were always working with 3,000-yard receivers. So it's not like they're in a bad spot. Could you see a trade maybe just to strengthen them if this is going to be a little longer? Yeah. Could you see like an Odell Beckham kind of free agent mercenary type of thing happen? Possibly. Or they may just kind of circle the wagons and just roll with it. I mean, again, obviously for fantasy purposes, we do have to play off of what is happening to those teams in the league. The Cincinnati Bengals are a game behind the Ravens, albeit, obviously they have a game in hand based on what went down last night. They do have obviously some tough division matchups coming up, and it looks like they're about 2 weeks away. This week is the Browns, next week the Panthers after that. Then it looks like they're on a bye. So maybe that's where the non-IR concepts are coming out there for Ja'Marr Chase. I'm sure the waiver wire is pretty thin right now as far as being an owner. If you're in contention, you could definitely maybe look to pick something up. Hopefully you have some depth on your bench. I wouldn't panic, but at the same time, yeah, you're going to be out one of the best players at the wide receiver position in fantasy football for right now. I would say at least that 4 to 6 week window, hopefully not longer, and hopefully no lingering effects. Now that's probably going to bleed right into the fantasy football playoffs again. So right now, trade deadlines are starting to tick away too. So you definitely want to probably, again, make a move based on that injury, or even look to be that guy that sneaks out. Again, a T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd, knowing that volume is going to be going their way. Hayden Hurst gets an uptick probably too. We'll see what happens. Obviously, crazy situation. But again, right now, it doesn't look too good for fantasy owners of Ja'Marr Chase. Obviously, dynasty, keeper leagues, you're definitely going to be holding on to him. But in redraft leagues, heading into the playoffs, doesn't look good for you.
Yeah, another potential injury. Well, definitely injury here, but depending on whether he plays or not this week will just be, I guess, a little bit of pain tolerance and what they can do. But Ezekiel Elliott has a knee injury and a thigh bruise that he sustained in week 7. Right now he is doubtful for that game. I don't think he's going to play personally. It just seems like with the Dallas Cowboys having the bye next week, you sit him out one game against a team like the Bears, which you expect to beat. I mean, let's be honest. The Bears have not been great on offense, and Dallas Cowboys defense has been pretty much the best in the league. I don't expect Zeke to play. Should be a big day for Pollard. We're going to talk about him a little bit more in our start sits section. But, it looks like Ezekiel Elliott will probably miss.
Next on the list, it hasn't been great in Green Bay this season for Aaron Rodgers and his wide receiver core. Just got a little bit worse. Looks like Allen Lazard will be out this week. He's got some lingering issues. This is his shoulder. We know he's been a little up and down this season. Hasn't quite been the wide receiver one that maybe they hoped he would just turn into. That being said, he is listed as out for this week, which would definitely, against that Buffalo offense, you're definitely, and defense, you're really trying to keep up with them, and they've already had enough trouble this year. Romeo Doubs obviously gets the uptick, could be a breakout game. I know Sammy Watkins did come back off of IR as of last week. And again, that team is just really, they're definitely don't look like your father's Green Bay Packers, but Lazard being out is definitely a hit to that offense. And again, it's a bit of a hit more than likely on Aaron Rodgers, who, again, for fantasy owners have already probably divorced him. That being said, this definitely doesn't bode well, and something to keep an eye on for those owners of Lazard moving forward.
Yeah, I just a little side note here. We did the update, unfortunately, for Breece Hall. Allen Lazard now out this week. I know, obviously Lazard's not out for the season like Breece Hall, but in one of the leagues I'm in, we're pretty much out of the playoff hunt. So we were trading some players for draft picks. We actually just traded away Breece Hall and Allen Lazard and got a pretty pretty healthy haul for both of those guys.
Hey.
And now the teams that have them are without them for this week, and unfortunately haul for the rest of the season. But got out when the getting was good, I guess. So got lucky there. But moving on to our next injury, Chuba Hubbard, he sustained an ankle injury. They said that he could have come back into the game last Sunday, if he needed to, but apparently he can't come into this game this Sunday because he's already been ruled out versus the Atlanta Falcons this week. Anybody who went out and grabbed D'Onta Foreman when the Christian McCaffrey trade happened, like we had suggested you go out and do right away, should be looking at a very startable asset. I think Foreman should be probably a top 20 running back against a pretty bad Atlanta run defense, considering he's the only one that's going to be getting touches in that backfield. You'll see a little bit of the Blackshear, the rookie that they drafted this year. He'll get a couple carries, but it's not going to be the split that Foreman and Chuba Hubbard would have had Hubbard been available for this game, though. So definitely throw your D'Onta Foreman in your lineup if you need a flex play, or I think even he's a good RB2 this week, honestly.
Another running back, another injury, another one with a question, but probably leaning towards not playing. James Conner already ruled out with a rib injury. This has been lingering, probably more than likely broken ribs, not quality stuff for a running back to keep hitting holes and getting smoked by D tackles with busted ribs. So he's definitely going to be out for this week, already said by Cliff Kingsbury. Darrell Williams, who would have been the direct backup, has also got hurt in the same game a couple weeks back with a knee injury. He is a game time decision as of right now, still questionable. I would think that, it's Friday. They kind of lean that way. Normally questionable means okay, but to keep teams in the guessing game, I guess, so to speak, for certain parts of the game plan, regardless, even if he does play, I think that last week you started to see the quality of Eno Benjamin as, a definite player. That offense got the DeAndre Hopkins back. I felt like maybe it would take him a game or two. Took him about all of, the coin flip to come back and be the same wide receiver, the same nuke that we knew. So again, that offense is starting to get a little bit reformed. So I think Benjamin benefits from having the wide receivers stretch some of that coverage, taking the safeties deep and out of the box. But Conner out this week. Darrell Williams, game time decision. I'd say probably lean to not really being involved, if at all. And Eno Benjamin will be the guy. So if he's on the waiver wire, definitely look to make that pickup. A lot of folks may have already had him down there as a stash because of Conner and the injury history that surrounds him.
Yeah, going to cover two more here on the same team. Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry both been ruled out for the Saints versus the Las Vegas Raiders this week. You were already probably starting Chris Olave if you had him on your roster, but now he's an even bigger play. And I think with, again, both of their veteran wide receivers out for this game, should see a lot of targets for Alvin Kamara, probably get another Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith game where each of those guys has a couple targets, and if they catch a deep one, could be okay fantasy day. So if you're looking for somebody you can kind of throw in a desperation, flex or double flex position, I think either Callaway or Traquan Smith would be a good addition. And obviously Juwan Johnson's been getting a little bit more action in that offense, which
That's
I believe we're going to talk about him a little bit later as well. So.
And finally, wide receiver news. One of the top guys from last season that's been a little banged up, a little struggle, obviously a little bit of a different offense, so to speak. Deebo Samuel is going to be out this week. Still has a little bit of an issue with the hamstring. We know how that has a strong effect. Going up against the Rams, the Niners will be without him. I know a lot of people have pieces of that offense already in play. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk has had a better season. And they did just recently pick up Christian McCaffrey, who obviously we know has a total dual threat running back and the pass catching game. George Kittle stayed pretty healthy. So you do have options for McCaffrey owners, definitely an uptick. Again, obviously it took maybe a week to kind of get adjusted a little bit more. Still maybe a growing pain for one more week, getting used to Garoppolo and the offense and everything else there with the play calling. But obviously Deebo being out is a bump up to everybody else in the offense. And we know Samuel was being used as a little bit of a everywhere on the field kind of guy. So maybe Ayuk gets that look. Maybe they spread it out a little bit more. Maybe this is one of those monster George Kittle games that you always kind of look towards throughout the season, but you won't be seeing Deebo this week due to a hamstring. And it's something you want to monitor if it's going to linger and you're an owner. you might want to look to maybe strengthen up your wide receiver core moving forward.
Yeah, I think Debo being out could potentially help Jeff Wilson honestly be startable for potentially one more week. I think, McCaffrey is such a good route runner, and like you said, they use Debo as that Swiss Army knife type of player. I think McCaffrey's very similar skill set, can obviously catch the ball just as well as a wide receiver, and obviously the running back skills from him playing running back. But I think you could see McCaffrey and Wilson in the game at the same time, and Wilson get a few more carries in this game. Maybe those Debo Samuel design carries go to Jeff Wilson, where they can put McCaffrey out, in the slot or even flank him out wide and kind of throw the defense off a little bit with him in a receiver role a little bit more. So I just, thought to pop through my head. I don't necessarily know that I'm running to play Jeff Wilson at this point, but I think if you're stuck playing him, it does make you feel a little bit better. All right, we are going to jump into our start sits. Realized, sometime earlier this week that through some sort of technical difficulty, our week 7 start sit episode never published. I do apologize for any of those people out there looking for that episode and it not coming. I'm not quite sure what happened, to be honest with you. But we're going to give you a quick rundown of our starts and sits for week 7, and then we'll hit you with our week 8 start sits as well. So my starts for week 7 were Kenny Pickett, Kenneth Walker, Alec Pierce, Gerald Everett, and the Patriots defense. I hit 2 of those. Ken Walker and Gerald Everett both did well in those weeks. Missed the other 3, unfortunately. Rudy starts of the week were Matt Ryan, Breece Hall, Alan Lazard, Juwan Johnson, and Jets defense. Missed on Matt Ryan and on Alan Lazard. Just barely on Lazard. And then the Breece Hall, we were not calling Breece Hall a miss because he got injured, so that's kind of a wash. So you take kind of a tie in that one there. We don't penalize for people getting injured, but I think Breece Hall probably would have gotten to that 15 PPR mark.
That we started out pretty strong, and then that was it.
Yeah. Juwan Johnson, huge hit, number 1 tight end of the week. So congratulations on that. You nailed that one. And your Jets defense ended up finishing in the top 12 of the week. So you got that one right as well. Our sits for week 7, I sat Marcus Mariota, David Montgomery, Garrett Wilson, Zach Ertz, and the 49ers defense. I was 5 for 5 on my sits. Mariota had a little bit better game than I thought he would, but still well under the threshold that we use for our start sits. Rudy's sits of the week were Trevor Lawrence, Jamal Williams, DeAndre Hopkins, Robert Tonyan, and the Broncos defense. Missed on Lawrence and Hopkins. They both had pretty good games. And then hit on Jamal Williams, Robert Tonyan, and the Broncos defense. So that brought our season totals, or our weekly totals, to you were 5-4-1. I was 7-3. In our head-to-head matchup, I went ahead 6-4, which puts me in the lead now, 37-32 with 1 tie. So pulling away a little bit here, Rude. You need to step it up this week.
Yeah. Well, I think I got it this week. So
I pulled ahead of you in our league of record this week as well. So this has not been a good week for you.
Yeah. Car trouble. We talked about that before the show. That we're not going to bring that up. Yeah. Again, most of my leagues where I'm getting smoked, my die on the hill that my guys this season were Najee Harris, Kyle Pitts, and Dameon Pierce. Jelani Woods also as a tight end. I knew he'd take a minute to develop, but yeah, having 2 guys that just, Harris is half of what he was last year. Some people think the foot injury combined with a tough offensive line and things like that are definitely a factor. And quarterback play, obviously, of course. Kyle Pitts, it's just, it sounds like everything. And again, I don't get to watch a lot, let alone, the Atlanta Falcons, but it just sounds like that whole offense and the play calling and everything else where, he has that one little game and where he makes a couple plays and you think, here we go. And it's just not looking good. I mean, a guy looking at the way that team's going, that coaching staff might give him maybe one more year. I don't know. I mean, Desmond Ridder at this rate could be a potential guy at the end of the season just to see what they have. Mariota has had moments where he looked like okay. And yeah, it's just been crazy. So, it is what it is. I'm okay with that, but we'll see what happens. You can't be on top forever. If occasionally you have to give other people a chance to, Pat.
I appreciate your giving nature.
Hey, man, we're less than a month away Thanksgiving, so I might as well be cordial. It's holidays are coming. So I guess then it is your the ball is you won the coin flip, so it's up to you if you want to kick or receive when it comes to our start sits for this week.
Start sits. You know what? I'll go first. I like going first. I like putting the pressure on you after I drop some knowledge on our listeners.
Yeah.
All right. So we normally record on Monday. Everything for the whole week. It's usually the only time we have, but this week Monday went a little long. We had some issues with, like I said, our software that we were using. So we're recording this on Friday. Okay. So this is after the Thursday night game, the Bucks and Ravens played last night, which the Ravens won 27-22. Pretty overall entertaining game after a slow start, but, I did have Tom Brady as my start of the week, so I may have gotten a reprieve from the governor on this one. Brady didn't have a terrible game, but I don't know if he's going to finish in the top 12 with what he did last night, but we'll see.
So you divorced him, is what you're saying?
Oh gosh, man! I was trying to avoid using that word because I know how much it hurts, but you just stomped on his heart again, huh? You and AB, you should start a rap group where you just dump on Tom Brady.
Oh, goat haters! Yeah, right. Well, something. No, don't wish it on anybody. I know a lot of people were speculating a lot of BS there. So again, I don't wish, as much as I'm not a big fan of the guy as far as a player, I don't wish that on anybody. But still, yeah. So and way to wiggle out of that one moving into Friday. So go ahead. What do you got?
Well, this one may end up worse. We'll see. But no. So my start of the week, and I picked this before we found out about the Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry news, because that did just break fairly recently. I'm going with Andy Dalton. I still think even with those guys out, Dalton could have a pretty good game. He's officially been given the starting job in New Orleans, at least for week 8. And he's going to have the chance to impress the coaching staff and hopefully keep that job a little bit longer. And he's got a pretty good matchup to do it against the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Luckily for him, the Raiders are dead last in fantasy points given up to the quarterback position. In fact, they're 2.5 points per game higher than the next highest team. So, everybody, there's a bunch of people at 23.5. It's a bunch of 23s and 22s and 21s. And then the Raiders are all the way up at 25 points per game given up, which it doesn't seem, 2.5 points doesn't seem like a big deal, but over 7 weeks, it adds up. The Raiders rank in the bottom 6th of all defenses in completions, yards, and touchdowns against them on a per game basis. And the best part about the matchup against the Raiders and why the opposing quarterbacks end up scoring so many points is because the Raiders can score. They rank 3rd behind only the Chiefs and Bills in points scored per game this year, which forces the other team to have to keep throwing the ball when they play against Las Vegas. So every week you're, as long as they're healthy, you're starting your Derek Carr, your Devontae Adams. If Waller's out there, you're starting him. Josh Jacobs has been having a great season. So the Raiders are putting it on teams offensively, and it's causing teams to have to continue to put points on the board to compete with them, which they're doing, which is why the Raiders, record is so poor at this point in the season. But I think that, this is a great spot for Andy Dalton. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, and I think he's going to be chucking it a ton in this one.
So my start of the week at quarterback is going to be that Davis Mills of the Houston Texans. I like what he did last week. Threw for 302, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Got a little bit of a division matchup this week against the Tennessee Titans, who aren't very good, again, against the quarterback position, where they're in the bottom 7-8 in the league when it comes to giving up points to the quarterback position. We've seen them have some stretches this season where they just definitely don't look solid on defense. Now flip that over to Houston, where Davis Mills has had – it's taken him a while to kind of get there. I kind of thought he'd be a little bit stronger from the get-go, and that obviously did not happen. But, he hasn't been the worst quarterback ever. And again, I think you've seen over the last couple of weeks where he's kind of starting to get his footing. I know coming off of the bye week is huge to come out and drop in our league a record about 23 points. going into it, a tough matchup that they had against Jacksonville. But again, that was division. The Raiders, like you were just saying, where they give up some points. Tennessee probably going to do the same thing. So I do like Davis Mills this week. I feel like he's probably got top 12 potential. So if you're looking for a streamer in a good matchup, Brandon Cooks is starting to show up a little bit, and Dameon Pierce, albeit running back, can make plays out of the backfield. So that offense runs through their quarterback in a sense. And again, he does have some 300-yard games under his belt. So I like Davis Mills against Tennessee this week.
At running back, I'm going to go with the guy that we talked about a little bit earlier, Tony Pollard. There is a strong possibility that Zeke could miss this game or at least be less than 100% against Chicago. If he's out, I think Pollard immediately becomes a top 5 back for me. Pollard has been the more explosive back in this offense for the past year and a half, and this could be his opportunity to finally show what he can do as a full-time player. He averages more yards per carry and yards per reception than Zeke, and is just basically the better athlete at this point in both of their careers. I mean, Zeke was great when he was younger, and, running backs age fast in this league. And, Zeke is just kind of taken the pounding that he's taken throughout his career. And Tony Pollard's only, a year or so younger, but just doesn't have the miles on him that Zeke does. Not only will he finally get the majority of the work in this offense, but he gets to take on a Bears defense that's the 6th worst in fantasy, giving up 25 PPR points per game to the running back position. And I don't expect the Cowboys to give Pollard a whole lot of rest, considering that Zeke and Pollard are the only 2 running backs on their active roster on game day. So they're going to have to call somebody up from the practice squad to be Pollard's backup. And I don't know how thrilled Mike McCarthy is going to be at giving some guy who literally wasn't on the active roster a couple days ago a bunch of carries in a game that actually matters. Now, again, if the Cowboys get up big and they can pull Pollard at the end, yeah, maybe he loses a couple touches at the end of the game. But if they get up big, Pollard's going to be part of the reason why they're up big. If I have Tony Pollard in any leagues, I am 100% putting him in my lineup this week. And I can already tell you I've done some DFS lineups so far for this week, and I think Tony Pollard is in almost every single one of them. So being a cheap option for what I expect to be somewhere in the top 5 to 10 running backs in the NFL this week.
Yeah, he has shown it in the past. I like Travis Etienne this week. He's going up against the Denver Broncos, which, again, they do have a little bit of a defense that can, I guess, occasionally show up and do some damage. But they're kind of middle of the road against the running back. They're giving up about 19 points a game to the position. And we know that James Robinson was just traded to fill the hole that was Breece Hall's injury, traded to the New York Jets. So you have Jermichael Hasty, and I know Snoop Connor finally got bumped up from being like healthy scratches and stuff like that. He'll be the 3rd guy in line, the rookie out of Ole Miss. But Etienne has really kind of come on, and you saw the change happening. You saw that he was really kind of taking over the backfield through the last few weeks. In the last 4 weeks, he is actually number 10 in total yardage. And then at the same time, overall in our league of record, he's in the top 20. He's the running back 19. Going up against Denver, the one thing, too, you look for is that Etienne is targeted a ton in the red zone. He receives 67% of red zone targets, which is huge. And, I mean, the completion percentage to him is 64% in that spot as well. So I think that he really is going to become that multifaceted, all-usage kind of guy for them that they envisioned. Obviously, great rapport with Trevor Lawrence. And, again, you're going up against a team and a defense that's kind of just floundering out there. There's word that the head coach might not make it through the season. I like some Travis Etienne this week. I like him big time against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, he instantly got a boost when that James Robinson trade happened, which is nice. My wide receiver start of the week is going to be Devonta Smith against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers defense has been playing a little bit better as of late, but they're still the 3rd worst versus the wide receiver position in fantasy football. They've also not faced an offense like the Eagles this year, honestly. The Eagles are the 4th in points per game, 2nd in yards per pass attempt, and 6th in yards per completion. And Devonta Smith is third in the NFL in catch rate amongst players with 35 or more targets at 76.7%. He catches pretty much everything that comes his way, and I feel like there's going to be a lot coming his way against the Steelers this week. The Steelers are one of those teams that is not great in the back end. Their defensive backs and safeties are, average at best, and without T.J. Watt in the lineup, they really struggle to create pressure on the quarterback, which is why they're one of the worst teams in the league at forcing turnovers. And I think it's just going to be one of those games where Jalen Hurts can kind of just pitch and catch with whoever he wants. And with Smith being such a good, precise route runner, I just feel like he's going to be peppered with targets this week and could end up with a really huge game against the Steelers.
My wide receiver start this week is one DJ Moore. He is obviously in a tough situation there in Carolina. Kind of Christian McCaffrey's gone, coaching staff changing over. They did say PJ Walker was going to remain the starter regardless of when Mayfield, Darnold, anybody comes back from injury. And again, don't see anything happening per se anytime soon that could look like a trade. Obviously, they're just building up draft picks. But he's got a monster matchup this week against the Atlanta Falcons, who are the absolute worst. They give up 38 points. That's close to 40 points a game to the wide receiver position. So, again, you don't have a lot of competition down there. They have Laviska Shenault. They have Terrace Marshall. Shi Smith has been a little bit involved, but DJ Moore, they've already said it is a cornerstone. Definitely had a nice game last week in kind of like the first post-McCaffrey world. And again, that backfield not getting maybe the targets it used to either. 7 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown last week. So starting to build a rapport perhaps with PJ Walker. Maybe that's what they want, is a little continuity after the quarterback carousel that has been the Carolina Panthers. DJ Moore, I think it's a no-brainer. I know for a lot of people, and I talked about him as a possible trade piece, for depth for now and for future dynasty. Again, he's just usually pretty constant, a little up and down this year to be understood considering how bad that team's been. But I think this week, definitely think he's probably going to finish in the top. Personally, I think he's probably going to finish in the top 7 or 8 as far as wide receivers go. Barring something crazy, I think DJ Moore is a no-brainer start of the week and possibly, even higher than I'm expecting for this week.
Yeah, I have him in a couple of lineups. So, and he was actually one of the guys involved in the trade for Breece Hall, actually. So I feel like I got a pick, and I got a receiver who looks like, hopefully there's some resurgence to his season. So that'd be great if he does well. I'm going to start at the tight end position. I'm going to start Will Dissly this week against the New York Giants. And this could be seen as an endorsement for Noah Fant as well, but I'm a Will Dissly guy. I kind of, I just like what the guy's about. And I just feel like he's kind of Geno Smith's preferred tight end target. The Seahawks are going to face one of their toughest challenges this week in the Giants, but with DK Metcalf possibly missing this game and the Giants being a little bit better on the offensive side of the ball than I think we all expected coming into the season, probably going to need to keep their foot on the gas in this one. Again, this could be one of those high-scoring games. The Giants are actually really good against wide receivers. They're the 3rd best at stopping opposing wide receivers in fantasy football, but they rank 23rd versus the tight end position. So definitely could see one of these 2 tight ends, Dissly or Noah Fant, getting a touchdown this week against the Giants, but I'm going to go with Dissly to catch a touchdown, and usually a touchdown is good enough to be a start. So, and I know they're incredibly difficult to predict, but I do see the Seahawks being able to score, and the Giants' corners have been playing really well. So I'm gonna give one of those touchdowns to the tight end position.
Sounds like a plan. Speaking of tight end position, we've
touchdowns.
Talked and touchdowns. Yeah, we've talked about this gentleman a lot over the last week or so. Juwan Johnson of the New Orleans Saints. It's not just a tight end thing, or I should say a touchdown tight end thing. I've said before, I think you really see that the usage is starting to go up for him. Again, he is amongst tight ends. He's being targeted 63% of the time. He's tied for 4th in touchdowns when it comes to the red zone. He's tied for 8th in red zone targets overall. And he gets a juicy matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. They're one of the bottom feeders when it comes to stopping the tight end position. They are actually about the 4th worst, giving up about 14 points a game to the spot. Now, again, we know that when it comes to the Saints and the tight end position, based on, a lot of interesting concepts, that Taysom Hill is the tight end one, but he gets multi-use as running, wide receiver, quarterback. I think he's been, an assistant coach for a few minutes there. So he gets a lot of play as the position. So again, those points can go to him definitely. But I think you saw last week that you started to see a little bit come into his own. They went up against Arizona, who is the second worst team, and he really had himself a game. So now you're going up against the fourth worst team. I think, again, these matchups are obviously in his favor. But if your quarterback's getting more and more comfortable having you as the guy, Andy Dalton, they said, is going to remain the starter no matter how healthy Jameis Winston gets. So I think they like what they see with the offense clicking. Yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer. Juwan Johnson has the potential to be another top 5 tight end for this week, and a little bit more of a household name come fantasy circles and trades and things like that. So I think you should definitely pick him up and put him on your roster. Again, if you have Travis Kelce out this week and he's floating around in your league, it could be that start where some people scratch their heads, still haven't heard about him. They'll know about him after this week.
My start of the week at the defense position is going to be the Washington Commanders versus the Indianapolis Colts. The Commanders have not such a great defense in fantasy football so far this year, but they are getting better as the season goes on. My big reason here for wanting to start the Commanders against the Colts is obviously the Colts are starting a new quarterback, Sam Ehlinger, this week. Anytime you can take advantage of a less experienced quarterback, I think you have a decent shot as far as a fantasy defense. Guys who don't play as often have a little bit more trouble reading defenses at, real football speed. Obviously, guys who are less experienced, this will be Ehlinger's never thrown a pass in an actual, regular season game. He's played in the preseason, but doesn't see a whole lot of, NFL speed on the field. And the Commanders have actually been playing better as of late. It's just Washington also has a backup quarterback, so I think you could potentially start the Colts in this one as well. But Taylor Heineke has pretty much a full season of starts under his belt and has actually shown that he can play well when he plays. So for me, I like the Commanders defense against Indianapolis, who that whole franchise just seems like it's in a lot of turmoil. And if you listen to our episode that released on Tuesday, I know Scott feels it too. The culture in that building is just not great. I don't see a lot of positive things happening for the Colts the rest of the season.
Yeah, we're not going to go off on that again. My defensive start of the week is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm just beating up on the Broncos, but that's not hard to do. Their quarterback is
losing his mind.
Yeah, I think he's been out to lunch for a few minutes, but hey, you know what?
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
He's going to go to the Hall of Fame and all that
help
crap.
Myself.
Please enjoy. So, instead of let's ride and let Russ cook, it's been anything but. And again, it's the coaches in question. There's just a lot of things happening to that team. Jacksonville is, they're a hungry young team. There are some whispers they may look to trade some of their defenders, so they're kind of not so much in a win now mode, but definitely looking to build upon what they have. The Broncos do give up a lot of points to defenses. They're actually in the top 10. They usually give up around 8 or 9 points a game to the defense that they're going up against. Again, I know you said last week that going up against the Jets, they did obviously kind of help me reap what I sowed. They're, a top 12 defense. So I think right now, Denver's in a little bit of a free fall. You got an aging, hurt quarterback. You got an offense that's in flux. You have a coach that doesn't seem to really be able to handle it at this level just yet. And all signs point to, again, a coach like Doug Peterson taking his offense and defense against the Denver Broncos and putting it to them. So I like the Jags defense big time this week against those Denver Broncos.
All right. Well, those are our starts. Let's jump into our sits. So I am going to sit at the quarterback position, Ryan Tannehill this week versus the Houston Texans. Houston isn't necessarily a great defense, but they generally don't give up a lot of fantasy points to the quarterback position, mostly because they give so many up to the running back position, and quarterbacks haven't been needed in games against the Texans so far. Obviously, we try to give you players that you may be thinking about sitting I honestly, my start of the week would be Derrick Henry, but that's kind of a layup. I think Henry is going to absolutely kill it this week. I don't expect Tannehill to have to do much, and with the receivers that he's got at his disposal, I don't expect him to even be able to do much, even if they do get into sort of a shootout. Listen, Houston's secondary is better than people give it credit for, and then it's just going to be too right up Tennessee's alley to just keep handing the ball to Derrick Henry. I honestly believe that there's a chance that you could play Dontrell Hilliard in this game as well and get a respectable day out of him. That's how many points I think the running back's going to put up in this game. But I would sit Tannehill, and like I said, if you play DFS, I'm a type of guy who would pay up for Derrick Henry this week because I think he's going to be the number one running back on the week.
All right. Quarterback sit is ironically rather easy, I guess, nowadays. I'm sitting Aaron Rodgers going up against the Buffalo Bills. It just doesn't seem like, again, we talked about the Allen Lazard being out this week and everything like that. The Bills really do have, again, they have it on both sides of the ball. They have about the sixth best defense, roughly, give or take, depending on your league. But they're a top 10 defense against everybody, especially the quarterback position. Yeah, you're really looking at a tough matchup. I mean, Rodgers looks like a shell of himself. He's 14th in our league of record for the season. Again, he's only gotten over 20 points a game twice. Just came off a tough loss against Washington where he threw for 194 yards. The most he has this year is 255. 2 touchdowns is all he's got. He's already got 3 picks and 3 fumbles lost. So those are a lot of negative points that have sucked him out of being in the contention of being a tangible quarterback. He is outside looking in. Again, we talk about older quarterbacks and they can lose it quick. Again, combine that with bad to, mediocre, whatever you want to call it, wide receiver play because of the inexperience and the injuries. And that is the reason why you will not be starting Aaron Rodgers this week against Buffalo. I know he's maybe going to try to play hard because it's an honor thing to go up against Josh Allen in that offense, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, it's a tough defense. At the running back position, my sit this week is David Montgomery versus the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm starting Tony Pollard and sitting David Montgomery on the other side. The big reason for the Montgomery sit is he split carries with Khalil Herbert last week. Now you're already talking about, potentially a part-time player that Matt Eberflus, the head coach of the Chicago Bears, basically said that they're going to go with a hot hand approach. So there's always the chance that Khalil Herbert gets in there, gets the hot hand, and then you don't see much of Montgomery. So that in itself is enough for me to sit him. But also going up against the Cowboys defense, which is the 4th-ranked team in points allowed to the running back position in fantasy football. If Dallas's offense can get anywhere near back to the form that it was last year, the Bears may be forced to throw a little bit more than they even would like. And that could potentially even force the ball out of both of the running backs' hands even a little bit more. I know Chicago is very committed to the run, so they're probably going to hand the ball off, 25 times. But Khalil Herbert gets 18 of those, and Montgomery ends up with 7 or something like that. I think you could be very disappointed in the day you have. So if you have a better option, I know Montgomery's still been a top 24 back this year. But he scares me a little bit too much this week in the matchup and with what's been going on in the backfield there in Chicago.
My running back sit is actually Michael Carter of the New York Jets. And I did have him penciled in before the James Robinson trade, knowing that Breece Hall was probably out. He would get thrust into the forefront as your starting running back. And you also lost Elijah Vera Tucker on that offensive line, which definitely has an effect on the running game. Enter one James Robinson joining that team, which obviously new to the fold, will have to learn the playbook. Carter will probably get a 70-30 lead on that split, at least for this week. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe Robinson picks it up quick. I still think Robinson, given his past, as will definitely have an effect on that backfield with Carter as a whole moving forward. His matchup this week is against the New England Patriots, who up until this past week really had one of the best defenses against the run, and then got embarrassed on Monday Night Football. The Chicago Bears said, nope, not going to happen. And I that was just a weird game, Pat. I know you watched it. Everybody did, and saw, they yanked Mac Jones. They put Bailey Zappi in, and it almost looked like that team, and they had a couple injuries, but it almost looked like that team quit on Belichick because of maybe the pull of quarterback and not sticking by his guy. I really don't know what happened, and the Bears just jumped on it. Some turnovers were involved. They ran the ball a total of, from everybody, 45 times for 243 yards, averaged 5.4 a carry, and gave up 2 touchdowns, all on the ground. Justin Fields had one. David Montgomery had the other. It's not a Bill Belichick defense. Are they going to turn around in a division game and say, whatever the hell happened last week will never happen again? I really feel bad for the New York Jets this week. I feel like that they're going to be taken pillar to post by this team to show that, again, that they're not as bad as they looked on Monday night. They're still not as good as they used to be. But I think Michael Carter, unfortunately, is not going to make it out of this game alive when it comes to being a top 25 running back this week. He's already number 30 in our league of record. And again, between that and the James Robinson timeshare that'll probably become a thing, I just see that that's probably not looking good for him. So Carter definitely is a downgrade. Some people would have thought to sneak him in there. I wouldn't have him in your starting lineup at all this week.
Yeah, and if Robinson does get any work, it'll be the work around the goal line, which obviously just kind of kills Michael Carter's fantasy value. So my sit of the week at wide receiver is going to be Curtis Samuel this week against the Colts. Curtis Samuel he's been a pleasant surprise so far this season, but with Taylor Heinicke back at quarterback for the Commanders, Terry McLaurin kind of goes back to being the main guy, I think. Last year, Heinicke connected with McLaurin had over 130 targets. McLaurin finished, I want to say, as a wide receiver 28 last year, if I'm correct on my memory there. But it was definitely mid 20 wide receiver last year with Heinicke at quarterback, and you saw it in the first game last week. Terry McLaurin, had all the big catches, had all the end zone targets. Like, it was just, you can tell that Heinicke and McLaurin have played together and feel comfortable with each other. And I think that for everything that kind of Curtis Samuel had been in the beginning of the season might be fading and being back towards McLaurin a little bit, which we talked about in our trade episode earlier this week. And the Colts have only allowed 23.5 PPR points to the wide receiver position per game. If you split that up 3 or 4 ways, if Dotson comes back, or even if you have McLaurin now, you have Samuel. They throw the ball to the running backs a ton. To me, it doesn't seem like there's going to be enough to go around, and I don't expect a ton of scoring in this game with both teams having pretty decent defenses. So I would still even be a little hesitant to play McLaurin, but I think I would start him. But I am definitely off Curtis Samuel for this week until I see him sort of form a little bit more chemistry with Taylor Heinicke.
My wide receiver sit this week, it's going to be Tyler Lockett, the Seattle Seahawks, going up against the New York Giants. You got a lot of factors in play. You have him nursing a little bit of an injury, which is always one thing, a hamstring, questionable, probably not, at 100%. Also dealing with a little bit of a rib injury as well. You see DK Metcalf is going to be out. So that's also a factor. So all eyes will be on him, so to speak. I know we saw Marquise Goodwin step up and have a big game. And that's kind of the thing where, obviously all that attention is going to go to Lockett as being the wide receiver one on that team, the number one target, so to speak. You also have like the emergence of the Kenneth Walker out of the backfield, where I think they're going to be more comfortable to utilize him. And Geno Smith is really having a renaissance season. Everybody thought he could be this kind of quarterback when he came into the league. Obviously, he's had a very good rapport with Lockett, Metcalf, and the rest of the offense. But I feel like the matchup this week against the Giants, who are one of the league's best against the wide receiver position, they're actually the third best, only giving up about 20 points a game overall to the position. They're a little weaker against the run, giving up close to 18 points a game on that position. I definitely think something along those lines, a low-scoring game, not a lot going on. Again, defenses on both sides, they're actually pretty decent. So at the end of the day, I can kind of see where, Lockett just won't be that guy, where he's been top 15 or so wide receiver in our league of record. This is going to be one of those weeks where I think it's going to be very tough for him to get off. Could have some flex appeal, but I think he's probably better off on your bench if you have any better options based on that matchup.
All right, my sit of the week at tight end. This almost feels like a give me at this point, but he's still a decision. I know he's still a decision for me, so he's got to be still a decision for some other people out there. My sit this week is Kyle Pitts versus the Carolina Panthers. It's pretty simple, honestly, on this one. The Panthers are a top 10 defense versus the tight end position, and Atlanta averages under 22 pass attempts per game. That means for Pitts to even get 8 targets in this offense, he would have to basically get 33% target share, which that's just not something that I'm willing to bank on. And even still, you're looking at a ceiling of 8 targets. I mean, I don't have Kyle Pitts' stats pulled up in front of me right now, but I would venture to guess that he doesn't have maybe more than one game with more than 8 targets in it. So he's just not getting the volume that a guy of his caliber should be getting. So until the Atlanta offense switches quarterbacks or shows some sort of marketable change in the way they approach games, I can't start Kyle Pitts. I probably won't put him on my sits anymore unless, for whatever reason he starts having some good games and, then he kind of gets added back in. But for right now, he's a guy that I'm just kind of keeping on my. I actually have. Who did I start over him in a league this week? I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but I have Pitts. I think I started Tyler Higbee over him or something like that, which coming into the season, you would never think that would be a decision that you would have to make, but that's where we're at with Pitts. So I think you can leave him on the bench safely this week.
Unfortunately, I have to agree. My tight end sit, and I know we touched base on this gentleman a little bit in regards to the Jamar Chase injury. I'm sitting Hayden Hurst this week. I know he is, again, I think he's number 11 in our league of record as far as tight ends go, which, obviously that makes him quite startable, for a lot of leagues. I think for a lot of people, he was a nice pickup to have and make that work for, a sneaky late round pick or a waiver wire pick, so to speak. So again, I know he's not, he has decent games. He's not heavily targeted based on that offense. He's kind of the guy that probably makes out a little bit better knowing that those wide receivers are taking that coverage with him. Against the Cleveland Browns this week, it's a tough division matchup. Obviously, all eyes are going to be on finding ways to shut that Bengals offense down. Being down their main piece at wide receiver is a big factor. So I think that Hurst isn't going to be as sneaky because he's going to be more of a viable threat, knowing that he does have some stats. He's got 29 catches, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns to his record. A little bit questionable this week. I know that there were some lingering groin ankle injuries. So again, his reps were capped in practice and they're going to make sure he's 100%, unless something crazy happens for Monday night against the Cleveland Browns. But again, they have one of the top defenses against that position, which doesn't allow a lot of points. And they're going to have it a little bit easier fighting against that secondary. So I don't really think he's in a quite the favorable matchup that you would expect, again, where they're only giving up about 7 points to the position, where sometimes that could be a deal for you. But I think he's going to be more of just a guy to leave on your bench for this week.
All right. And finally, at defense, my sit of the week is, again, in that Panthers-Falcons game. I'm going to sit the Panthers defense. Carolina is a top 12 scoring defense in fantasy this year. And this matchup against the Falcons may seem like a good one, considering they barely use their top 2 weapons on offense, which is Kyle Pitts and Drake London. But Atlanta has actually been pretty stubborn in giving up fantasy points to opposing defenses. Because they run the ball so much, they don't really turn the ball over a whole lot. And despite the fact that they run so much, they still rank in the top 10 in points scored so far this season. So even in this pass-happy league that we live in right now, Atlanta is doing something different, man. They're running their 1950s offense and doing it efficiently and doing it well. So when we're talking about fantasy defenses, we're not always just talking about starting a defense that's going to give up the least amount of points. You also want defenses that are potentially going to create turnovers, going to be in position to create turnovers. And the Falcons really don't do that very often. They don't really give the ball away. They're one of the few teams with technically losing record that is still plus in the turnover margin on the season. So not really a good spot for the Panthers defense this week against Atlanta.
And finally, my defensive sit this week, and again, it's not a crazy one. I know not everybody's big on them, but they still have a name. The Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Philadelphia Eagles this week. The Steelers defense had a tremendous week 1 with 26 points. against the Cincinnati Bengals in an upset win. 7 sacks, 4 picks, recovered a fumble, scored a touchdown, only gave up 20 points. The yardage, I mean, it was crazy. Since then, not so much. Now, I know TJ Watt injury is huge to that defense, as well as other little nicks and dings along the way. That team as a whole, since that win, has lost 5 out of their last 6 games. And they're not losing by a lot. I mean, again, they haven't given up tons of points all over the place, but Buffalo did wipe the floor with them. And since that 26-point outburst in week 1, the highest total for them is 5 against the New York Jets in week 4. So overall, again, you're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who have one of the highest flying offenses in the league. They're coming out of a bye. The Steelers are going into a bye. To me, this is a perfect storm where, honestly, I think the Steelers are going to probably be a negative points land when it comes to their defense. So not many people would go up against the Eagles. And I know this is kind of a layup, but for some of those that just want to leave them in their lineup and think, well, they'll get me some points. Again, I think they could be one of those teams that could be a -4 on defense and actually hurt you in a close matchup. You can find something better out there, again, based off of matchups. Not that I'd go Green Bay against Buffalo over this by any stretch, but again, there's definitely stuff out there that you can find on the waiver wire. Again, maybe like an Indianapolis Colts against Washington or something along those lines. But I would stay away from the Steelers for this week. They're going into a bye. You could probably drop them and maybe look to reevaluate your defense moving forward in the season.
Yeah, they're really only good when Watt is in the lineup. I don't want to say only good, but he's the catalyst for the whole thing. Putting pressure on the quarterback is the key to pretty much everything in defense in the NFL these days. So without guys that can do that, and even still, like Jalen Hurts is incredibly hard to put pressure on anyway because he's so mobile, and they do so many of those RPOs, and it's not a good. It's a very tough offense to defend as it is. So yeah, I definitely would not be starting the Steelers this week.
Yeah. The only shot I think for legit points in that matchup, I know the Eagles have a little bit of a shaky special teams when it comes to giving up long runs. If they were to sneak a punt return for a touchdown or a kickoff, to me, that would be the only way they could probably salvage that. So yeah. Not seeing it happen.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our Start Sit episode this week. Before we head out, just want to say thank you to Mickey's for partnering with the show. If you're looking for, a great place to go, grab a bite, grab a beer, and hang out and watch some sports, Mickey's is the place. 327 East Main Street in Tuckerton. Mickey's Port-o-Call Pub, where friends and family meet. And real quick, just want to throw our socials out there again. Again, please feel free to follow us on Twitter. We are at the 9Route1 and at Scott from Delco. We also have our email for the show. If you'd like to email us anything, we are at the 9routeFFB@gmail.com. And our website is www.the9routeFFB.com. Anything you want to throw out there, Scott, before we head out?
Again, folks, we always appreciate all our listeners. Please like and subscribe on all our formats, both on the podcast, on the websites, as well as we are available on YouTube if you're interested in playing that in the background while you do some homework or, office work, or you're cleaning the house or whatever.
If you just need help sleeping, you can just put us on. And we have very soothing voices, I've been told.
Yeah, definitely. If you're looking to take a nap anytime soon, please put us on. But moving forward, big weeks ahead for the Philadelphia sports scene. Go Union. They're in the Eastern Conference Finals, 1 game away from the MLS Cup, looking to take down the New York City FC that stole the title from them last year due to COVID restrictions. Go Birds, coming out of a bye, still undefeated. Going to probably slap the Stellars around. Hopefully they don't look past this game. And our Fighting Phils. Tonight is game 1 of the World Series in Houston. Pat, you and I will reconvene.
Yeah, baby.
I can't wait. You and I will reconvene on Monday. That will actually be game 3 at Citizens Bank Park. Personally, I am Phils in 5. I think it's going to be the same wrap. It's going to be win game 1, lose game 2, come home, and Houston never leaves, and they get to celebrate like they did in 08 on the field with the fans, and I will be looking forward to that parade. Hopefully, I'll be able to remember it. For Pat, I am Scott. Go Birds, go Phils, go Union, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.